Hey, good morning, everyone. Kevin's my name, CEO from Community Management Solutions, and welcome again to another webinar. It's been a little while since our previous one, and we obviously did recruitment and we did investigations, and you'll probably notice that there's a procedure here that we follow, and that what we do, of course, is that we select a couple of advertisements in the newsletter, and then as a result of that, after 2 or 3 of those, we then actually come on board and follow that with an actual webinar, just to sort of clarify, I guess, things that we talked about before, which I think is really important, and go into a little bit more detail. Again, this is the basic level, I guess, but by the same token, I hope that everyone will get something out of it. HR, being the profession, of course, is filled with reactive measures in relation to things like performance management, of course, and things that we do to react to situations that occur within the workplace. But more importantly, that there is another avenue of HR, which is the proactive component. And a lot of the services that we offer are proactive. And what we're trying to do there, of course, is to ensure that our people, whether they're employees or volunteers, are given the opportunity to I guess, work in a workplace which is obviously free from harassment, bullying, and discrimination, but also is supportive of them from a physical and a mental perspective, especially in these times. So the objective, of course, of this webinar is to look at what we can do from a proactive perspective to help our people. And I think that's really important. I will put the slideshow presentation on, obviously, and go through it, but I won't read all of it in detail. I'll just use it to trigger discussion, and then at the conclusion of that, if you have any questions, you may put those forward, of course, or alternatively just send me an email with anything that you may wish to talk about, and as I normally do in the next newsletter, I'll put those questions and answers if they're relevant for everyone, because that way everyone gets the value of that. So let's proceed. We'll probably go for about an hour or so, but we'll just see where it takes us, and away we go. And thank you very much for attending today. It's greatly appreciated. So as you can see, this topic is in relation to employee wellness, and everyone has a different description of that. Everyone has a different definition of it. It means different things to different people. And of course, this is not a black and white area. It's what's called a gray area, which is those parts of the HR practice whereby everyone has an opinion. No one is right or wrong. It's just a matter of putting ideas out there and suggestions, and then I use this terminology all the time: is using what is useful to you, discarding what is useless to you, and then moving forward. And but the most important thing today, please, is just to keep an open mind about what we're talking about. And a lot of the things that I talk about are not practical for you. I say that up front because of certain circumstances or the workplace that you're in, or whatever the case may be, and that's fine. But some certainly may be practical, or some may be able to be modified to fit your particular environment, and that's really important as well. I don't think it's a secret, of course, that mental health within the workplace is more challenging now than it ever has before. The statistics in relation to employee health are increasing in relation to EPAs and things like that. There's a lot of increased stress for people due to coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, issues with the economy, of course, with rising inflation. And it's fair to say, I think, that regardless of your situation, that people are finding work a little more stressful and challenging than they have ever before. And this is due to the fact that we're probably asking people to do more with less in some situations, and also, of course, personal pressures may be impacting that as well. So I think it's important, of course, that we acknowledge that the global pandemic in particular has questioned some people in relation to working and how important that is to them, and things like that. So it's important that we look at that as an overall perspective. People have always tried to balance work-life, and that's a buzzword, a HR buzzword. Work-life balance is often talked about. I find that the majority of new applications that I'm receiving in relation to a variety of different roles, people are actually specifying that work-life balance is more important to them now than it ever has before, especially the capacity to work from home or have flexible working hours. That appears to be just as important to people as remuneration. And that wasn't always the case, but it is more important now because I think people have come to the conclusion that for some roles, obviously just for some, they can certainly work from home at least a proportion of the time, and they've enjoyed that for a variety of reasons. Okay, but we'll work through this anyway. Okay. So Australian legislations, we're talking about obviously workplace health and safety legislation, the Act and the regulations and the codes of practice. And basically there's a general requirement that employers take reasonable steps to protect people against risk to their physical health and their mental health as well. And it's only what is reasonable under the circumstances, of course. We can't be responsible for all aspects of physical safety and mental health, otherwise work wouldn't be possible sometimes. But we do have to be mindful of that, and we do have a lawful responsibility to take reasonable care. There's nothing actually compulsory about developing a wellness program. You don't have to do it. It's a voluntary activity. And some people will have one in place. Some people will be thinking about it, and some people will decide that for whatever particular reason, it's not suitable for their environment, and that's perfectly fine. But it's a key initiative, I guess, in what's termed employee and volunteer attraction, which is obviously trying to get people to come and work for you, and retention, and that's probably even more important, is trying to provide a working environment where people enjoy coming to work. They don't feel under too much pressure, other than obviously the job itself, and you're able to retain those people because they feel valued, because they enjoy coming to work, because it's an environment where they are treated with respect and courtesy. And that's all part of course, your cultural alignment and the ethics that you bring to an organization. And of course, management must take the lead in this. They must set the example. They must set the tone for that. And of course, a wellness program is only one small component of having that occur. And regardless of how big or how small the wellness program is irrelevant. It's just the actual attempt is sometimes more appreciated than the actual result, because you are showing that you're trying to do something for people. And sometimes it's not easy, but there's always something that you can do. Of course, we are looking at mental health more so now than ever before, and the statistics have risen dramatically within this country and overseas. So teaching people how to cope with stress and expectations of the workplace forms part of any wellness program. Of course, what we're looking here is the benefits of a wellness program, generally speaking. These are just some of them. But the objective, of course, is to increase staff morale. And what is morale? Well, it's just basically how people feel about coming to work, how they feel whilst they're at work, and if they can go home not concerned or too stressed about what has occurred during that day, and that they're ready to go for the next day. Staff engagement is staff believing in the organization, believing in the mission and values, genuinely wanting to do the right thing, and be culturally aligned as to what we're trying to achieve, which is very important as far as developing a very cohesive team. It can increase the levels of concentration and focus, because we are so focused on work sometimes that a slight distraction in relation to something else, which is a little bit more of a recreational type of activity or training, which allows us then to refocus and back to concentration. Sometimes humans only have a limited time span of concentration, and then of course it leads to lack of productivity once you're sitting in front of a screen, for example, for too long. So it's important to have a break from that, and it's important to have something else to focus on until you go back to the actual work itself. An increase in resilience. We're always trying to build staff and volunteer resilience in the workplace to become durable when pressures come, and be aware of what those pressures are and what those trigger points are. And appreciation from management is really important, because if you develop a wellness program, albeit no matter how small, I think staff either consciously or subconsciously develop an appreciation that management are at least trying, at least they understand that there are concerns within the workplace, so they appreciate the effort. We hope to have a reduced sick leave as a result of that, because the people are more aware in certain wellness components about their own health. It may lead them to seek additional health benefits outside the workplace, which is lovely, or it may give them just more awareness of what constitutes a healthy lifestyle, or changes that they can make personally to their physical or mental health to help them and ultimately reduce sick leave. And that leads to that last point of being a healthier workplace, both physically and mentally. So where do we start? Well, it's never easy, but of course, and I'll be quite honest with you, with some organizations that I have worked, trying to develop a wellness program has been problematic, it has been difficult, it has been not supported, and people have looked at it in some situations with a cautiousness, I guess is a nice word to put it, because they may not see the benefit from it, and they are just terrified of the impact that it may have. And I'll talk about this all the time on service delivery and or operations. But the first thing, of course, is to basically advise management or supervisors or whoever the case may be, decision-making authorities, that you wish to consider having some sort of wellness program or some sort of at least starting point within your organization. And of course, this information today will give you the ammunition to provide to management as to what the benefits are. And it's really, really important to talk those through, because you can say, well, it's quite obvious what the benefits are. And if you are familiar with wellness programs, you certainly would know that. But some management, through no fault of their own, may simply not be aware of the potential, perceived, and real benefits of a wellness program. So it's important to get them to at least contact management initially and say to them, look, we want to develop something like this. We really need your support and preferably guidance in how we do this, because to be successful, you're going to have that buy-in at least at a particular level. And as you all know, we're running a 10,000 step program at the moment for all our members, and we really enjoyed that. We are advertising it for everybody. I have board members, I've got staff, and we've certainly got a lot of our members participating, which is fantastic to see. So everyone's out there participating in this program. It's a fun activity with some prizes that we're going to give to the people who are most successful, I guess, but everyone is successful just for participating. I always say to my email responses to people that every step is a step in the right direction and every step is a winner, because it is. You're doing something for yourself, you're doing something for your family, you're doing something for your health. Every time you go out there and take a walk in something as simple as that. And the most important part is that it has also a mental health as well, and the fact that you are doing something for yourself as an individual, and that you're forcing yourself to perform exercise, and that there are some mental gains from that, of course, as far as relaxation and stress relief and things like that as well. So that's and the reason we put this together was we thought that what can we do that is a very simple thing that's going to cost people no money, other than a bit of their time and effort and inclination, of course, is to develop this program and just say, well, this is a good precursor to putting something together at work and a good stepping stone. And obviously, when the competition finishes, we don't want people to stop doing that if they find that that's an activity that they enjoy and they're perhaps walking with their family or whatever the case may be, getting some good family time there. And as long as it's a safe activity, then by all means, we're hoping people will continue with that. But it's a very good program to start things off, and again, a cost-effective one. Not everything has to be resources and money-based, and have that to have a good impact. So again, support. We talked about that before. Taking baby steps is really important. Putting the idea to management in a very complimentary manner and a very respectful manner, I think, is really important. We're trying to get what I always refer to as voluntary compliance. Voluntary compliance is really good. You don't want to hit against management. You want to be voluntarily compliant. In other words, you want them to come along with the journey with you, and that's really important. And the way you approach management, you must do so in a respectful manner and say, hey, look, we'd really like to start this particular program with this particular activity. It could be very, very, very small. And some of the things I talk about later are minuscule. They don't occur every week. They're just a small thing to get people on board, but they can have an impact in getting the momentum swing going to developing a full-on wellness program. The thing, of course, that you're going to have to talk to management about is how can we effectively put this together or implement this particular activity without affecting core business, because core business is 100% important to management. Core business must not be affected, nor service delivery to whoever our customer, client base, whatever the case may be, is. It mustn't have a detrimental impact on what we do for a living. But so we need to talk. We need to think about that carefully, about how that would work and what would be involved with that, so that it doesn't have that impact. So management have no fear that their core business will suffer as a result of participating or supporting a particular program. And of course, we want our managers to actually take part in the program as well, to become part of it, part of the decision-making process, which is going to make everyone's life much easier. Survey is one option. If you think that, do we need a wellness program, and is it of any interest to our people? Well, you can develop a culture survey, and a culture survey is very simple. It's a document which is sent out to staff and or volunteers, and basically asks them, everything about the culture of the working environment, including training and development needs, and a whole slew of different things. But you can specifically link it or have a proportion of that designed in relation to employee wellness and what they would like to see within the workplace. We can help you develop that with the SurveyMonkey tool if you wish us to. We've done that for numerous members, and everyone's quite surprised as a result of what comes back from a culture survey, especially if it's done on a confidential basis, and the information can be invaluable to management to see performance gaps and to move forward. So if that's what you want, because you can get specific evidence to say, well, look, we don't think there's any need for it, but then you do the culture survey and it comes back that 80% of people would really like a particular activity, or there's a particular activity you thought would get a fantastic response and it's very low at 10 or 20%, then you have to rethink things. With any wellness program, you must have flexibility and you must have an open mind, because what sounds like a great idea to you or to your people who are designing the activity may not be well received by others. So you've got to have an option A, an option B, an option C, or not be so tied down to one particular idea that you can't go in a different direction if you have to. Okay. So do we form a committee? Well, I think that's a very good idea if you could. And a wellness committee can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. It doesn't matter, depending on the size of the organization. But it's best to include people from a variety of roles. In other words, if you can include a manager or a supervisor, all the better. Make sure that no particular demographic of staff is precluded, because with some people obviously who do shift work, we need someone from that particular realm present as well. So to put a variety of people in there if it's possible, and they're responsible obviously for the planning and development of the committee, and most important, the communication strategy, because this will be the death knell of whether you're successful or whether you're not, is to have a really, really clear communication strategy as to who's going to be told, when they're going to be told, how are they going to be told, and a timeline of events, because there's nothing worse than saying, we've got this great program that we're going to put together, but having no definitive timelines as to what will take place when. And that's a real issue for us, of course. So a communication strategy is really important, because people will become excited, they'll look forward to the initiative if you give them plenty of time to prepare and get mentally prepared for what's about to take place. It's nice to have a committee chairperson, so pick that person through a vote if you wish to, or perhaps someone would volunteer for that role, who can coordinate everything, because ultimately one person would be better to coordinate than a variety, although of course the committee, like any other committee, can give tasks to certain individuals. And I think it's important that we keep this informal, but we still take like informal minutes of the committee, so we have a clear understanding of where we were, what we're doing, and what we're trying to achieve. Okay. Education and communication, and as I said, the regular communication is so imperative. We can advertise it in newsletters, like if you've got a company newsletter or similar, or staff notice board, or something that goes out to people as a paper document, or whatever the case may be, flyers. It doesn't really matter as long as we get the message out there. I always used to use wellness, occupational health and safety and similar topics as part of a standard agenda item for all management meetings and or office meetings that occur. And it may well be that you have nothing to talk about, but it's certainly nice to have that, so that regardless of what meetings are occurring around the office on a regular basis, the wellness component or the OHS component is mentioned, and that gives everyone an opportunity to put their ideas forward. Okay. So what does a program look like? Well, again, a program can look 100% completely different to another in similar organizations, because you develop the program which is suitable for yourself. But these are just some of the things that you could consider. One, of course, is fitness, which is we're talking about physical fitness, and the 10,000 step walking program is one of those. Stress management is another, health coaching, mental health initiatives, medical screenings, incentives for healthy and positive behaviors. Nutrition is a big one. I think in our industry, especially with a lot of people, working unusual hours, perhaps we do have shift workers working for us and things like that, or early morning risers, or where time is poor with balancing work-life responsibilities. I think education in relation to nutrition is something that, excuse me, every individual can use, but more importantly, they can take that information onto their families and friends. So nutrition is important. Non-smoking, which used to be a massive component of wellness programs, but the amount of people smoking has decreased considerably, but there's still a percentage of people. So non-smoking and anti-drug campaigns is a responsible one. Weight loss programs for some people are something that they're very interested in and looking at, which goes hand in hand sometimes with nutrition. Team fun activity training days, education such as toolbox talks. A toolbox talk is a very brief talk. Our occupational health and safety person, for example, will go out to a site and give a toolbox talk or a small 15 to 20-minute address in relation to ergonomics, for example, or manual handling. So toolbox talk can be done quickly at a morning tea, afternoon tea, before work, after work, during lunchtime, on a particular subject that may be of interest to the majority of your employees. And they're invaluable in providing short bursts of information which may assist people. Social support, outings, behavioral change interventions is some, just as very, very brief examples. Tailored to fit, and I keep talking about this, and I will keep talking about it, that there is no one-stop shop. You can find on the internet particular programs that have been designed, or you can employ people to do so. But if they're going to be honest, you can't just get a particular program and get it to fit within your organization, because everyone is unique staff numbers, unique responsibilities, unique operation requirements, and unique service delivery models. All these things must be taken into account. The age and demographics of the people who work there and or volunteer there is something that's very important as well. The time that's available, the allocation, support from management, the resources or not that are available, the support or not that is available. So you need to tailor the program to fit. And it doesn't matter if you just do one single thing per whatever period of time, perhaps per month, just to get things started and just to show that there is something of support there. As I say here, nothing is insurmountable. Take it slow, and then ultimately you would hope that the benefits will ultimately speak for themselves. ROI, which means return on investment, which the management always want to talk about return on investment. They need to show, perhaps to a board or perhaps to somebody else or perhaps to themselves, that whatever they're initiating is actually having a positive impact, perhaps on the bottom line or perhaps on the staff themselves, and ultimately on the bottom line because of that. So you might have to be prepared to show some evidence, quantitative or qualitative data on how you've been successful. And that could even be something as simple as staff feedback forms or a survey, because a culture survey per se should never be done in isolation. It should be one prior to a program and then one after a program, or perhaps annually, or whatever the case may be, to show that you are heading in the right direction and the staff are grateful and or supportive of what you're trying to achieve. And if they're not, then you make the switch, you make the adjustment, and listen to what the staff have to say. Okay, so let's look into some detail about some of the general, principles. And I have spoken about these at length within the newsletter, but I think it's important that we talk about it ourselves. So flexible working hours is really important, because especially for people with responsibilities that we may not all have, such as children, or taking care of an elderly family member, or sometimes when there's illness within the family, or whatever the case may be, some personal issues. And everyone has personal issues from time to time, which is extremely difficult and counterproductive to work. And we must be understanding, we must be tolerant as best we can around the working schedule to try to help people, because they will greatly appreciate it, and it will have a reciprocal effect in cultural alignment, because it shows that when something occurs, then the organization is willing to support. So if flexible working hours may not be appropriate when you're dealing with a service delivery model which has fixed times, and that's perfectly understandable. But if it is able to be offered, or there is a workaround, then just consider that and always think outside the square. So I think it's good. And as you can see, just a change of 1 hour there, or whatever, to deal with a personal matter. If we can accommodate that, I think that people really appreciate these things just as much as an increase in remuneration and things like that. Flexible working arrangements, and of course, this has never been more prevalent than it has due to the recent COVID-19 pandemic, in that people have found out that a lot of roles, not some of course impossible, but a lot of roles have the capacity to at least operate either permanently working from home, or at least a proportion of that. And people have found, generally speaking, that they've enjoyed that flexibility. They've enjoyed the fact that they've got reduced expenditure, that they've got reduced travel costs, that all those things have led to a better work-life balance. And they've found that the majority of people can be trusted to work from home, and they're actually productive in doing so. Generally speaking, it is a privilege, not a workplace right. So it has to be adequately dealt with, proper policies and procedures. But if you do have roles that can work remotely, or at least a proportion of the time, then please consider that. And again, I understand that a lot of roles are simply not able to do that just because of the nature or the inherent requirements of the role. Understand that 100% completely. All I'm saying, of course, is that for some positions, there may be the opportunity for some flexibility. And I think that's really important. And as I said before, a lot of the resumes that I've been receiving in our recruitment service have specified at the front that what's the situation in relation to flexible working arrangements, because they've had a taste of it, they enjoy it, it's important to them. And that, again, yes, has been coming first rather than the remuneration on offer, which you can show how it's so important to certain, or a group of people. And the ability now to attract people is probably more challenging than it's ever been, because there is a shortage of skilled workers at this particular time, as we are all aware. Okay. So one statistic, and I will talk about statistical numbers, because I think it's important, and this gives you the ammunition again to talk to managers and say, well, look, these are the statistics that we utilize. So one statistic stated that over 65% would look for a new role if they could not have a remote option available to them. And another statistic showed it was more important to over 30% of candidates than actual remuneration. So when you take that into consideration, perhaps you're offering a role that perhaps is not as good as it could be from a remuneration perspective, then perhaps you could come to the party, so to speak, in relation to flexible work practices to help sway that person's thinking. And that's another tactic you can use as far as employee attraction is concerned. Okay. Celebrate wins. And I think this is important too. And why is this part of a wellness program? Well, it's about people being appreciated, and I think it's extremely important. So I don't think that we celebrate wins as much as we should within the workplace, whether we're fearful of doing that. And one of the points of contention is that an old school management trait was that, well, if you say thank you, if you're polite, if you say well done, if you say great work, or that was a really good piece of work, then people will then become complacent, because they think that they've done a great job, and therefore they will start to be a little bit relaxed moving forward, because they've done a great piece of work, or whatever the case may be. But I don't believe in that personally. I believe it's important that we celebrate wins, both formally and informally. And there is so much stress within the workplace from time to time, depending on the occupation. and pressures that it's sometimes difficult to know when a win occurs or appreciate it. So, but individual people who are working hard, they're diligent, they're trying to do the job to the best of their ability, sometimes under tremendous stress, need to be told and informed that they're doing a good job, whether that's an individual or perhaps a team. So to actually comment on that from time to time, I refer to this as management on the run sometimes, whereby, there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, by the way, that email, that was really well constructed. Thank you so much. Or, saying these little things, there's nothing wrong with it. And I don't believe any harm can come from it as long as it's appropriate. And of course, it can be done formally. I've used to work in five-star hospitality where we had formal reward and recognition schemes with prizes and scratch tickets and all these things which were fantastically well received from staff, because that had a five-star customer service component, and we were rewarding excellence in customer service to our guests in those particular hotel properties. So that was an example of where we really pushed the reward and recognition component of a wellness program. And reward and recognition is just simply one component of a wellness problem. But of course, Employee of the Month schemes, we're all familiar with those. They seem to have gone a little bit out of fashion at the moment. But increasing staff profiles is also important as well, and showing respect and courtesy to all staff, regardless of their role or position within the organization, is very important. And I think this forms part of a wellness program. It's more of a mentality or a management mentality rather than the traditional view of what a wellness program is. Okay. Involvement. So support volunteer or community involvement. I have worked for some major charity organizations over the years, some which had a very tremendous social impact and social purpose. And I was quite proud that I had the opportunity to work for those organizations. But quite often you can actually link or have a workplace giving scheme to a local charity of your choice, whether it's an animal refuge, or it's a children's hospital, or it's an organization I used to work for, which was Legacy Brisbane, or whatever the case may be, something which has a purpose where they're genuinely helping people in the community, then that's an option. You can participate in a wellness program through a link to charity and have a not-for-profit partner whereby you actually do some work for them as a volunteer, whatever the case may be, and you get some community fulfillment from doing that. That's a wonderful thing. It's difficult to quantify and to put a measure on that, but you get a good feel from doing that, helping with the community or volunteering. So allow your people some time if possible. Again, I understand how busy staff are, I understand the commitment, and these things are not easy, but if we can allow your people to have some time and help volunteers or help a charity or whatever, then you have a charity of choice or whatever the case may be, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. So just keep that into consideration, the good feel that staff get from participating in such a program. Again, it's hard to quantify, but it's real, okay? Financial education, I think, is really important. I believe that people are under increased financial and economic pressures at the moment due to the economy, due to recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, and just the stress and the speed of working, generally speaking, is difficult. So I think providing financial education for people as individuals is really important. And this is a key strategy, which is, wow, that's really useful to teach people, perhaps how to budget, perhaps how to take advantage of their superannuation and things like that. I think something is really important in financial education, or how to cope if they feel that they're in trouble financially, if they've hit a hurdle, and we all hit hurdles, if they've suddenly got into financial trouble in a particular situation, and we all can appreciate that most of us have been in that position from time to time. What can we do to get out of that? What options do we have? Having a financial education is really important as part of a wellness program. And that would be a perfect topic for a webinar, or alternatively a toolbox talk to get a professional person to come in, a business person or someone similar, to give some financial education to staff, just to give them a chance, I guess, to make the most of what their remuneration is. Okay, activities. Now there's an endless list of things that you can do and introduce for your people. I've seen all these in the workplace: Tai Chi classes, yoga classes, meditation. have all been very popular and widely utilized in a number of organizations that I've worked for. And the reason why, I guess, is that generically most people can participate in one of those activities, regardless of their physical capacity or ability or age or interest, because they are very much low impact type activities, especially the Tai Chi and the meditation. They're all linked, of course, to a physical wellness and also a mental wellness. So they're some of the traditional ones which can be organized. Strongly recommend, of course, if you are going to implement any of these, you get a professional person to attend who's preferably a paid person, who obviously has the appropriate indemnity and insurances, rather than give it to someone who's going to volunteer to do that job. I don't think that's a good idea whatsoever. And that's really important to consider that. And that's obviously something for people to look forward to. And I remember that my previous occupation had a yoga class, for example, and the majority of people attended that on a fortnightly or weekly basis, and they loved it. They loved the opportunity to do that. They looked forward to it. They thought it was a team building exercise, give them a chance to chat about a few things other than work and have a small break away from the workplace. And they came back rejuvenated, which is nice to see. EAP program, of course, Employee Health Program or Employee Assistance Program is commonly known, and the majority of our members will have access to one or access to one through us. And that's important to have that for confidential staff to provide support for themselves and or their families if they require it on a confidential basis. And we've all experienced situations where we felt, I guess, if we're honest with ourselves, that we may need to speak to a independent professional person to get some advice or balance into a situation that we find ourselves in. And I think it's extremely important that we take advantage of that, or at least a component of that is included in a wellness program. Okay, wellbeing workshops. You can have a wellbeing. I used to work for a not-for-profit charity organization, and they had a particular day which they described as a well-being day. That wasn't the title of it, but it was a well-being day. And they basically had about 7 or 8 or 10 different activities all over I guess they could call it a campus or the workplace. And you as an individual could then choose which one you wish to attend. Maybe I'll go to this one, maybe I'll go to that one, or maybe I'll go to the other one. They were listed at all different times of the day. So you could work in the morning and go to one at lunchtime, or you could go to one in the morning and go back to work. Or if you wished to, you could go from one to the other. And some were run concurrently, but there was always something for everybody. One of the ones was simply just having a storytelling exercise like you do with kids in the kindergarten. Someone would read you a story and you'd go along and sit there. Others were, of course, a physical type activity like we discussed earlier, and others were different things, you know what I mean? So it was really interesting to have a variety of activities that people could go, because you could always usually find something for everybody. And it was entirely up to yourself whether you went to 1, 10, or 0. And I'll say this later in the piece, but this is extremely important. So please, if you listen to nothing else today, please listen to this. Nothing in a wellness program should be compulsory. Nothing. It should all be done voluntarily, and there should be no pressure, overt or covert, put on any individual to participate in any part of a wellbeing program. I need to emphasize that it is extremely important that everyone takes that into account, please. Okay. Leadership and management training. And this is something that's important from a management perspective, is that leaders and managers need to receive training, from my view, in relation to signs of employee burnout and the trigger signs for people who may be stressed or looking at difficult situations in their life. They must be aware, or have the awareness, I guess, to see the signs, to be aware that when issues may take place, and if there's an issue with a particular employee who's suddenly deteriorated or has made a big error, or whose performance is not as good as it possibly should be, well, let's be real about this. Everyone has problems. Everyone has personal issues from time to time. And does it impact our capacity at work? Of course it does. We can pretend that it doesn't, but it does, because we're all human beings, and we have to be tolerant of this, and we must be mindful that from time to time people are going to struggle, and we must say, okay, well, perhaps it's this person's turn, and hopefully then when it's my turn, they'll have the same understanding that I do. So there needs to be some tolerance in the workplace to appreciate that from time to time, people will have difficulties, and we need to support that. And having management training to utilize that, or to have that mindset, I think is really important. We're not talking about staff and volunteers taking advantage of people or advantage of management, or, well, I'll just do what I have to do because they're a soft touch. Well, it's not the case. And sometimes, of course, would we be victim of that? Possibly, but by the same token, if you're doing the right thing by 8 out of 10 people and it's reciprocated, then it's worth it. It's worth the risk. Okay. Urgent, please note. Now, this is the only slide that I'm going to read verbatim, and it's probably the most boring one, I guess, because I'm reading verbatim, but I have to do it because it's really important. So please bear it with me, and please bear the following in mind. As in any workplace initiative, you must. Now, this is not you should, not you could, not you possibly may. This is you must. Have sign-off approval from management. Make sure management are aware where, when, how, when an activity is taking place and who is participating in that. You've taken the necessary precautions to perform a risk assessment and ensure that you comply with all health and safety legislative and work protocols, including code of conduct. So the activity that you're planning, you must ensure that someone or anyone, the manager or the workplace health and safety representative or whoever the case may be, or the committee, has performed a risk assessment on the activity, and you're going to try to make that activity as safe as possible to comply with all health and safety legislation. And of course, that it's not anything which is outside of the code of conduct. No person should be pressured or encouraged to participate in any activity that they do not wish to do voluntarily and which may harm their health. So I know it's common sense, but it's extremely important. I've seen some people include some activities in the guise of a wellness program, which have been dangerous, which have been irresponsible, which have been foolish, and you cannot do that. You've got to take care of people, and you've got to protect them from themselves in situations. And it can be difficult when someone comes up with a great idea that they're going to do a particular activity, but you can see that it could be fraught with danger. And you have to protect the person at the lowest denominator who may get hurt from that. So you've got to be very, very careful. And we also don't wish to embarrass any other person. I don't believe in participating in activities. For example, if I deliver a training course, I will never isolate an individual or try to get purchase from an individual by embarrassing them in any way whatsoever. It's really important that we don't place people in a position where they feel uncomfortable, they feel humiliated and or embarrassed by any activity. And sometimes it's hard to say that. So you've got to ask yourself these questions when you think of an activity. Who could possibly be hurt by this? And some people may feel that they must participate because they're getting peer pressure to do so. Be very careful about that. Everyone must voluntarily agree to participate in the program. No one needs to feel peer pressure to have to participate in the program. All people should have the appropriate medical clearance from their own general practitioner, of course, before participating in any activity which may have the potential impact to their health. And that's extremely important because you don't know, and nor do you have the right to know what a person's medical background or current situation is. You should not need to disclose that to you in relation to this program, nor should you ask any information on that. If a person just simply doesn't wish to participate in a particular activity, then they don't want to participate in the activity. You don't ask the reason or try to ask why, because they may have a confidential reason that they don't wish to participate because of a personal, medical, or other issue. And that's really important. So please take that into consideration as well. And as I said before, no person should be embarrassed or ostracized if they do not wish to participate in any activity. No reason is required. And we must be aware of cultural sensitivity when choosing activities. And this is extremely important. You may pick an activity which you may think, well, this is a great idea, but culturally it may be insensitive, and a proportion of our people may take offense to that for one particular reason or another. So think very carefully, do your research before you select an activity which could be a problem. And do not choose activities which have the potential to discriminate against either directly or indirectly against any person or group of people. That's the same definition. in the Discrimination Act is that we don't have the potential to discriminate either directly or indirectly against any person. So we have to be careful about that. And I'm sure you can think of some examples of that, but that's really an important slide. I know that it's me talking from the slide, but it's extremely important. And these things you've got to put in place to protect your legal position and make sure that you cover things and act appropriately. There's nothing worse than having the negative impact of a wellness program. Okay. And again, as I said, this is go back to the tailor fit again, is that everyone has different staffing numbers, everyone has different responsibilities. And I'll say it again, some of this information will be useful, some will be useless. Discard what is useless and take the useful ideas to fit within your particular organization and develop your program and you utilize it as you see as a best fit, and never be afraid to say, well, this sounded like a great idea, but ultimately it was not, or we had this idea, but staff wants something else. We have to be flexible. We have to be like a tree in the wind, and we have to listen to the staff and make the changes that are appropriate. And a wellness program that may be suitable today or next month may certainly not be suitable in 6 months' time, or whatever the case may be, or vice versa. A wellness program is living and breathing and unique to every single organization. So please take the appropriate steps there. Okay, urgent, please note too. That sounds a bit scary, but anyway, some of the following will require budgeted resources. Now, you may have a particular support from management that you do have a proportion of money to spend, or you may not. So you have to pick your poison. You've got to pick your activity based on, is this going to cost us money? Do we have the budget for it? Are management supporting us with that financially? Are the staff willing to provide a proportion of funds to fund a particular activity? And these things can happen from time to time. And of course, you've got to have that other impact on what does this have on service delivery, and what impact does it have or may have on clients and customers, because you've got to negotiate those terms with management and make sure that it's not impacted. And of course, you don't want to participate in an activity which can lead to negative publicity for the organization. And you've got to think things through as to what that would happen if you're doing an activity in a public place, for example, and it has an impact on your reputation one way or the other. You've got to be careful and think about these things up front, which is really important. Now we're going to look at activities for consideration. So we'll just talk about these, I guess, briefly, and we could organize a book club. I used to run a book club through one of my previous organizations, whereby we'd have a book of the month club, and we'd get together and we'd read the book and together and privately and talk about the book and do a review. A very simple, organize a book club, which was really, really well received. Surprisingly, but a lot of people still do read hard copy books, and it was a very good one. By the same token, you could start an employee or community library in your organization, whereby everyone has a lot of old books sitting at home doing nothing, gaining dust. Bring them in and start an employee or community library, which is really lovely. Start a reading club, same premise applies, which is really nice. That can lead to some family involvement as well, which is great too. Develop a wellness wall, whereby you have a wall within the organization where you have activities listed, you have things listed, what's going to occur or what you're considering occurring, asking for people's ideas and suggestions, and celebrating wins when you do have an activity, publishing things with people's permission as to what's occurred. That's really nice to have that as well, to keep it in the front of mind. Again, arrange for people to receive training in financial responsibility so they can maximize their pay and take advantage of the remuneration that they receive. I think that would be greatly appreciated. Create an acknowledgement jar to comment other people's positive work. I think that's really important, that people from time to time acknowledge each other. It's a peer-to-peer situation whereby you have a jar, and when you see someone do the right thing or a good piece of work, you can do it confidentially, or you can put your name to it. You just drop it into the jar and say, I saw this person do this, and I thought that was really good. And at the end of the month or at a staff meeting, you read those suggestions. It increases staff morale. And it's really nice that people acknowledge each other. Peer-to-peer is really important. Peer-to-peer acknowledgement is just as important as managers acknowledging their staff as well. Send an inspirational quote or story of the week for perusal to promote positiveness. Sometimes we can be negative at work because of the situation we find ourselves in. So we need to have some positiveness. You probably noticed in the newsletter we have inspirational quotes as part of our newsletter all the time, and I really strongly believe in that. It's lovely to read a couple of inspirational quotes from time to time, just for life balance and just to reset the mechanism, so to speak, and say, okay, yeah, I can get some value from that particular quote. I think that's really important. Work with management support personal development is part of your annual performance review. So people often don't look forward to performance reviews because of the fact, or performance appraisals, what they're traditionally known as, because they're fearful of what may occur or what may be brought up or whatever the case may be. But the learning and development component attached to those is very, very important as to what that person wishes to achieve in the next year and how we're going to help them achieve that. We provide training on performance appraisals and how to do them properly and how to develop those as well. But I think that's a key component, and not just technically speaking of the wellness program, but of the whole HR suite, but it is related. So we'll talk about that. Other things that people have done is having a no talk day, which is quite interesting. They ban meetings for one morning because sometimes people get tired of going to meetings and they just want to, everyone concentrate on work for part-time. A project time is a really good idea to set a specific period of time each week away from the coalface, away from the phones, away from the email, say 5% to have quiet time to work on a particular project or improvement in work practices as part of continuous improvement and things like that. That's a nice idea. Rewarding employee tenure, I think, is important. We tend to move from job to job. And so traditionally, 5, 10, 15, 20 years has been rewarded as long tenure. And that's lovely as well. But I think realistically, we have to diminish those timelines now because people tend to not stay in one particular role as long as they used to, nor in one particular organization. And I think that will continue in the future. So rewarding a 12-month achievement or an annual achievement is a wonderful thing, because I think that's a real achievement. So we must reward tenure for people as well. Okay. Encourage people to break and go for a walk when frustrating or difficult situations have been dealt with. I think that as part of a stress relief, if you have a difficult call, a difficult email, a difficult client interaction, and you have the capacity to take 10 minutes away from the office just to cool, to go for a walk, and as long as everyone's aware that where you're going, what you're doing, you've got permission to do so, go for a walk, and the managers are aware, just to debrief and to chill, perhaps to chat to a colleague, is good for your mental health. And again, just to reset the mechanism, which I often talk about, reset, so that you're able to come back into it and you don't carry it on. It's very easy to carry. You carry a call, you carry an email, you carry a negative situation from one situation to another. And that can have an impact on your customer service delivery model when you are dealing, of course, with a difficult client and then you get another call and you haven't recovered from the difficult client call and you're talking to somebody else and you're still subconsciously thinking about that other call. It has an impact on service delivery. So think about that as well. Designating morning tea coffee time for staff to have a break and a chat. An employee referral program is important because now it's hard to find staff. So if we can reward a current employee with them referring a friend or a former colleague to a role that we have advertised and they go through the formal process, and if they're successful and they pass the probation, then a remuneration award or something similar to that for that referral, I think is really important. And hopefully people will recommend good people to come to work for your organization. A costume theme day, to have a bit of fun in the workplace is one. Offer some free things for staff when reaching goals, such as movie tickets and free giveaways. Build a staff recreation room where work talk is off limits. This is banned. You come in here, you can't talk about work. And set up a games area or other activities for staff to unwind and relax for short periods. Even if you just take 10 minutes away from the computer, away from the screen, just to do something else, or go in and just chill and think about things, then come back. Building a staff recreation room is a wonderful thing. And I've seen this work tremendously well in a lot of organizations. Adequate shower resources, if it's possible, on site so staff can go for a walk at lunchtime or participate in a yoga class is really important as well. Okay. Celebrate a made-up holiday at work, something silly, something ridiculous, something that's not offensive or not discriminatory or not inappropriate. It's something made up holiday at work that you can celebrate as a day. Work milestones and anniversaries, a good piece of work or something in particular that's occurred, celebrate those. Our staff an extra day off before Christmas. We've initiated this program. I think it's wonderful. I think it's lovely to give, if you can, I understand service delivery model, but if you can give staff an extra day off, that is paid staff off before Christmas to do their shopping and to take care of things for their family, or whatever the case may be, that's a greater thing. So allow staff to have some time off on their birthday, whether it's an hour, a half a day, or a full day. If you can do it around service delivery, is a good thing. Have an office pet friendly day is a lovely thing to bring animals into the office, and dogs and cats, or whatever the case may be. Now, this again is fraught with danger, because I've had situations where people have had allergies and they can't do it, and it has caused tremendous difficulties. So you've got to do your research. You've got to do your planning. You've got to get a buy-in from all people. No one must feel pressured about this occurring. It has to be voluntary. So use your better judgment, please, as to whether that would be well received or not appropriate, depending on the service delivery model that you have. You've also got to be careful that you take care of people. So if it's not appropriate because you've got children or things like that, then obviously it's not appropriate. Use common sense with that, please. Increasing your people's profile is important. I think regardless of a person's position within an organization, you should celebrate their profile and increase their profile, because generally speaking, everyone works well. It's like a well-oiled watch in an organization. If one party doesn't perform their individual duty, nothing works. Everyone must work together to make it productive. And sometimes we don't appreciate people depending on the nature of their role. And so it's important that we increase people's profile so that people appreciate what they do as far as their everyday work is concerned. Okay, we can hand out weekly awards for different activities, incorporate plans to encourage a green office, which is nice, I think, and something really positive for the environment. Promote healthy cooking contests, which is a fun activity to do if you have the facilities and the capacity to do that, or cook at home and bring them in and have a healthy cooking contest at lunchtime or something. Have a monthly fitness challenge, participate in the 10,000 step program. Encourage employees to sleep well and have workshops on how to achieve that. Insomnia and people struggling with sleep apnea and other things is a dramatic impact on health. People not being able to sleep because of work stresses and or not understanding relaxation techniques on what the best method is to have a good night's sleep can have the most dramatic impact on a person's health than any other program. So please consider that as well. Okay. Have the employee outing morning or day if it's practical. Again, have a team scavenger hunt just for a little bit of fun, bearing in mind, as in all things, occupational health and safety, encouraging walking and people to use stairs in large environments. Create a local community sporting team with a supporters club, which we used to, at one place, have a local soccer team that we used to go and the staff used to come and support us, something like that. Special days such as Mental Health Monday, I've just pulled that one out, so to speak, something to do with that particular day. Help combat eye and posture strain by having stand sit desks and training in office ergonomics. Incredibly important to have the capacity when people are staring at the screen, perhaps in some roles, 6 to 8 hours a day, they need the capacity to go for a walk. They need to be trained in ergonomics to know how to rest their eyes from time to time and look at distance. They need to have the opportunity to have sit-stand desks to help their posture and help any lower back issues and other things. So they need to have that capacity, and we need to support that as well. Okay. Avoiding offering unhealthy snacks is it's very, very tempting to bring in cakes and to bring in donuts and to bring in wagon wheels and to bring in all these other things. But we need to be careful about offering unhealthy snacks if we're talking about a traditional. People get a buzz out of it, and it's lovely, and it's very, very thoughtful for the people who are doing so. But we get so many, of course, I think it's better to have another option, that we have food bowls available for people and water coolers, and we look at health initiatives in relation to eating and actually encourage that. I think that's really important, because what you do at work can be taken home and vice versa. And sometimes the temptations at work to participate, oh, I must have a piece of birthday cake, or people will get it and take offense. It's an unnecessary strain that people don't want, So have an option for people. Perhaps have a fruit option and a cake option, or whatever the case may be, so no one feels left out. But be aware of that too. Smoking, drug prevention or cessation sessions is really important for a certain proportion of individuals. They would really appreciate that assistance and help. Again, remember, nothing is compulsory, everything is voluntary, and we do not force or even encourage people to participate in these programs. It is a voluntary activity. Ordering lunch for the office sometimes, that's a nice thing to do. Just a few of the suggestions linked, of course, primarily to those with limited resources. Yeah. Now, some statistics that you may or may not be interested in, but I think it's important to share them. 52% of US companies offer wellness programs. That's a massive figure. 72% of employers saw a reduction in healthcare costs after implementing a wellness program. So these are statistics that you can use to justify a particular program for management. The average ROI, which is return on investment for employee wellness programs, is 6 to 1. $6 return for every one spent, which is tremendous as far as returning investment is concerned. Wellness programs can reduce absenteeism by 14 to 19%, which is massive compared to what it would be without that program. Okay. 57% of workers with high health risk became low risk after completing a work-provided exercise program. 89% of employers are engaged in their wellness say they enjoy their work. If those statistics are true, well, that's tremendous because that's a big proportion to how many people actually enjoy their work. I'm not talking about being ecstatic or exhilarated by work, but simply enjoyed it. It doesn't become a burdensome task to attend work. And 83% of large companies offer wellness programs, 58% of small. And I suggest that's because the 80% of the large companies have more resources to accommodate that, more people to cover for absences and for people to participate in activities. But this always comes back to what I talked about getting a tailored program to fit. Okay, these are popular programs by popularity and what is generally, and the first one is general wellness. And what that means, of course, is that we incorporate everything into that, which is the whole gambit of wellness. Everything we talked about, you can introduce something like that. If we have the 10,000 step challenge, well, we have a wellness program. It only consists of the 10,000 step challenge at this particular time, but at least we have, or trying to have, a wellness program. And one thing will lead to another. On-site flu vaccinations is very important and been well received. Tobacco cessation, we talked about that. Health risk assessments. Now, some people will not wish to participate in a health risk assessment, getting a professional medical person into the office to take, things like blood pressure or whatever the case may be. Absolutely have been successful in some places, but some people do not wish to participate in that. They do not want to protect their confidentiality of their health information. So that should be something which is purely, again, as all things, a voluntary activity, and be careful about whether you would include that particular program. A reward for completing particular programs, weight loss, stress management, preventative activities and/or programs. Personal or life coaching is a big one that's coming to the fore now, and medication as well. Okay, so how to get started? Again, first you've got to obtain management support in one capacity or another, even just a verbal to say that you are intending to do this and you wish to do it. Why should they provide that to you? And of course, you can say that 25% of employers, the top goal is increased productivity. So you can say what you're trying to do, of course, is increase productivity within the workplace. And of course, 63% of companies offering a wellness program report an increase in financial sustainability and growth. So that's a really good activity, a good statistic. And 60% reduce their healthcare costs. So in summary, what have we talked about today? The presentation has been targeted at the beginner level to implement a wellness program. I'm trying to talk to someone who's had no experience in it, and I apologize in advance if you're a HR practitioner, you've got a lot of experience in this field, and you know exactly what you're doing, and you agree with some of what I said, and more than likely you disagree with a lot of what I've said, and that's perfectly okay, because that's the whole objective. We can actually help you develop and assist you in the development of the program if you wish to. And in closing, I'd like to thank you for attending today. As always, your membership is greatly appreciated. We treat everyone as part of the Community Management Solutions family. We are genuinely interested and caring for what you do within the workplace. We try to support you, and this has just been one initiative that we have put forward to try to give you some food for thought. That's all it is, just some ideas on paper. And what you do or take from this is entirely up to yourself. But I sincerely wish you all the best in implementing your own wellness program, even albeit if it's only small. And I think that everything that you can do in this space shows that you're trying to become a HR buzzword again, which is called an employee of choice, which basically means that with your resources that are available and your situation, you're trying to do the right thing by the staff and volunteers. You're trying to do the right thing by your people. You're trying to make the workplace a little bit better than it was before. And as long as you try to do that, that's all you can do. So once again, if you have any questions, please email them to me. I would really appreciate that. I will respond to them individually, almost immediately if I can. If I have to research them, I will get back to you within a reasonable period of time. And if there's any that I think are important for everyone to have the information on, then I'll put them in the next newsletter. But once again, thank you for attending today. I greatly appreciate your time. And from Community Management Solutions, all the best for the future. Thank you. Bye.